Hi everyone, and welcome back to my No Buy Year. Today's video is going to be about how literally anything can be a justification to get you to buy something, and so we're going to try to use that very fact as our number one anti-justification. So for context, this video is going to be released on Black Friday, the sales holiday to end all sales holidays. And I had grand plans about researching the origins of Black Friday sales, some statistics about sales, some statistics about wasteful spending and consumerism and all that. But I think we've probably seen all of these before. And my value in adding to this conversation isn't necessarily in providing evidence and research, but in providing the personal experience, the lived experience, the pivot from less conscious consumerism towards more conscious consumerism, and the barriers we encounter on that path. So, without further ado, anything could be a justification to make a purchase. This is also what I would consider a non-controversial take when one thinks about the tactics of advertising and marketing, influencer marketing, the social landscape of generally enabling consumerism. Even some of the discussions I've had in my comments have found similar experiences as I have, where if I ask a friend or family member or somebody in my life about buying something, or, I'm not always asking, but sometimes I'm just sharing, hey, I've been thinking about how I want this lately. Usually the default response is, oh, you should buy it. You should treat yourself. You deserve it. Oh, that's good. That's a cool thing. Oh yeah, I wanted to buy this too. Or here's something I wanted to buy. And we kind of share in that environment of consumerism together. And it's just normalized. It's just accepted. The questions are not usually, oh, do you have the money for that? Do you really need it? Are you sure you want to buy that? What purpose would that serve in your life? It's not really examined critically, even from the people closest to us. And sometimes it is, for those of us with supportive partners or partners who understand or have the same kind of mindsets. Sometimes maybe we do have the critical dialogue of, okay, well, I know you're trying to reduce your consumerism, so do you really need that? What about our budget, etc.? But among friends, among even close friends, in my experience, when you talk about buying things or consuming things, the attitude is generally, YOLO, you deserve it, get it, girl, let's go shopping together, let's do this, let's get it done and let's have fun. So we can't always rely on the people around us, even those who support us, to bring us back down to earth. And I guess that's partly what I'm here for, right? To bring myself and anybody watching back down to earth with these videos. Anything can be a justification to buy. Let me give you some examples, some more examples. So, your mood can be a justification to buy. If you're happy, let's celebrate with a purchase. If you're sad, let's cheer ourselves up with the purchase. If you're mad, if you're stressed, oh, let's buy something to give us the dopamine pathway to follow. From the looking at things, browsing, wanting, putting it on a wish list on a pedestal, to making the actual purchase and clicking buy and seeing, I guess seeing the money leave our bank account is not necessarily part of the dopamine, but a lot of us will not even use our bank account and it'll be credit and not real money until the bill actually comes. And then following the path of the update emails and the package along its progress across the country, across the world in some cases. And all of those steps can be dopamine drivers and activate those short-term pleasure centers, but also activate the spike downwards after we engage in these behaviors. And then kind of drive more of the desire to engage in that behavior again and again. And the path to the high, the dopamine high, requires more and more, and the lows get lower every time as well. And again, people have talked about this, people have cited their research, and I've read the books as well, and I am not necessarily here to provide a well thought out, sourced argument on this point. At least not today. The point is, our mood, no matter what it is, can be a justification to purchase something, or can be used to justify a purchase. Sales can be a reason to justify a purchase. I should have started with that one probably. It's Black Friday, and what have we been seeing leading all the way up to this time, besides material, trying to justify buying something because of the sale? Hopefully you're watching content like this where we're actually anti-justifying the thing because of the sale, sometimes actually because of the sale. Sometimes that's a reason to not buy in actual fact. But anyway, hopefully you are filling your mind with this kind of content rather than the opposite, rather than the content from influencers making their living off of sales, or the marketing teams directly representing the brands making their money off of sales. But sales are a very big reason to justify impulse buys and planned purchases. I even said earlier in my Choose Your Own Adventure video, where I was talking about budgeting and buying things full price, that my plan, if I do buy anything in a sale going forward, is to put the remainder of the amount directly into savings. So it is as if I paid the full amount in dollars, whether it all goes towards the item or part of it goes towards myself, paying myself in my savings account. I have to be able to spend that full amount to buy whatever it is on my wish list going forward. So that's kind of how I'm getting around this mentality, or trying to set up barriers for my own self to say, no, it's not actually a deal. You have to have the money, even though some of it will be going to my own savings account, but the money will be leaving my account in full either way. Also, the fact of a good deal, the feeling of a good deal. I had a comment, I think on the video, about me wanting expensive jeans, as far as expensive jeans not feeling good to wear because you didn't get a good deal on them. And part of why we like our stuff is if we felt like we got a good deal. Again, I'm taking this comment out of context, so don't quote me on that. I don't think that was the full meaning of what the person was conveying. So this is just, for example purposes, about the feeling of a good deal being a motivator to purchase, and not a good motivator at that, because the deal, the thrill of the hunt, the illusion of value is something that is super targeted at this time of year. I had another comment about Scroogenomics. There's a video that I will try to add to my videos that inspire me that calls the holiday season an orgy of value inflation, I think. And he showed a bunch of statistics of graphs about how the spending goes up in many, many countries. It's not just America during November, December, like really high compared to average times. And he also did a value breakdown of, if I buy something worth $50 and the person who receives it gets $30 of value out of it, then I've wasted $20, but then I get $20 worth of pleasure out of gifting it, and then, you know, whatever. He breaks it down in interesting ways, basically saying that the time of giving is inflating the value of goods because somebody wouldn't necessarily get the dollar amount of value out of what you spent on them. So you can watch that if you feel like it. I have not read the full book, although I am kind of on the lookout. And my library doesn't currently have it, and I have a long to-be-read list, so it's not going to be on my immediate radar, maybe for next year. We'll see. It's kind of arbitrary anyway, right? In some ways, the price of a good is kind of arbitrary. It's not necessarily indicative of the value that we will get in our lives from said good. We could have a $5 pair of pants that we wear every single day, and we could also have a $500 pair of pants that we wear once a year, and one of those is very good value and one of those is not. At the same time, if you flip that around and you wear your $500 pair of pants every day and your $5 pair of pants never, you know, I guess you could argue that once a year would still be better value than $500 pants. I guess you could argue that wearing your $5 pair of pants once a year is the same as wearing your $500 pair of pants 100 times a year. But what I'm saying is that no matter how cheap or expensive an item is, if your cheap item just sits there not getting used at all, that's not a good value. If your expensive item gets good use and lasts you years, it might have just as much value. And I actually also think there's something to the joy per use. If it really brings you a lot of satisfaction and joy and represents you in your most true way, and the way that you feel like most aligns with you and your values and what you want to express, then that also, to me, has value. But again, that can be used to justify a purchase. And I don't recommend that you go down that path if you're trying not to justify your purchases, not to make more purchases than you plan or intend to. So again, I'm still mired in some of these narratives myself, and I want to break free as much as I can, while being aware that I'm still under the influence of some of these justification trends. Okay, so that's maybe enough about how sales justify these things. It's also, sales create the notion of FOMO, or that you have to act now, so it's an impulse as well, or that you feel like it's going to slip through your fingers and you're going to miss out. And I also think there's something to that, where the feeling of missing out, the negative feeling that you get from losing the deal, might be actually worse than the benefits of getting the deal. You know what I mean? Like, the feeling of loss is maybe more propelling for you to make that purchase than the feeling of gaining that you got the deal in some cases, right? If you miss out, you feel like, oh man, like that was a once in a lifetime opportunity, which buying something is never a good once in a lifetime opportunity. No. Actually, on that note, when when you buy something, how often do you keep the memory of the actual act of purchase with you? I would like to reflect on that myself for a moment and ask you to do the same. For me, I get memories out of using the stuff that I buy, but very rarely is it ever attached to the moment of purchase of the item. So buying something actually doesn't create any memories, and by buying more stuff, you're not actually missing out on something or not missing out on something, right? Like if you miss out on creating the memory of buying something, like that's not a thing, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas the things you can actually miss out on are more genuine memory creating experiences, right? The things that you need to worry about FOMO for. You know, I would actually argue that if you got invited to a party and you're thinking about whether to go and you're feeling the FOMO if you don't go, I would actually argue that going to the party to avoid FOMO is not that bad in some ways, because it is an event, it is an experience, it is an opportunity to connect with other human beings on a possibly deep level, you never know. And that kind of FOMO, I think, it's actually, maybe if it motivates you to go out and interact, maybe it's a good thing. Whereas the FOMO of missing a sale is not rife with those same opportunities. You can't connect with somebody by buying this thing. You can't go out and experience something new. You don't have the ability, you know, if you go to a party, you might try something new. You might have a new snack available or a new drink or a new game or a new experience in some ways that might become a memory you carry for life. You might meet your future spouse at that party, who knows? If you are contemplating buying something and have the fear of missing out related to buying that thing, what are you missing out on by not buying it? You know what I mean? Like a few dollars saved if it's something that you legitimately need and end up buying later because you realize, oh, I should have bought it on sale. Oh no, would have saved $100 or whatever. In the scheme of things, that's not going to be that big of a deal. And yeah, $100 is kind of a lot of money, but most of these sales are not actually going to save you $100. Let's be real. You know, even the 25% off, 50% off, 40% off, all these sales, a lot of times they're already marked up more, and then the discount doesn't actually eat into the price that it normally is that much, right? It's not that much of a discount. I said this in my first video at the beginning of the week, so repeating it a little bit here for the actual Black Friday day. But it's not usually going to be that much money you save. And in the grand scheme of life, the money represents time, sure, and how long you have to work for it, yes. But it is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the level of experience that, you know, FOMO maybe should be reserved for. And I didn't intend to go on to the philosophy of FOMO in today's video, but there we are. Leave your comments down below if you want to share some insights that I maybe missed on that topic. Okay, the next justification is telling ourselves that we need something, and or when we actually need something. In my case, some of my needs this year are viola strings, which are kind of legitimate because they do wear out and need to be replaced. And then another kind of need is a tablet sleeve so that I have privacy and protection for transporting my tablet. And some of these, you know, I could live without a tablet sleeve. I could live without changing my viola strings until they physically break. I will not sound my best and will compromise my work, which I'm not really willing to do. And you know, that's a more legitimate need than even the tablet cover. But I am still kind of keeping an eye out for those things during sales season. And I know that the strings go on sale at a certain shop. So I have experienced this before. This is not my first rodeo with the viola strings. And I do plan to get my year's supply when they're 25% off, provided that the sale is the same. However, what sometimes, dare I say often happens, has happened to me before, is that I will go into the music store online looking for my viola strings, see the discounts, and something else will make its way into my cart. Or I might even stock up too much on the thing that I actually need, to the point that I either forget that I have these things. That doesn't usually happen to me, if I'm honest, but I know it does happen in some cases. If you get too many duplicates, you forget where you put them, or forget that you have 5 backups or whatever, and you end up buying more. Or I end up stocking up to the point where I could probably wait until the next sale and keep the money in an investment account or whatever instead, you know, use my money to make money instead of spending it all, so I can become the store for the things that I stock up on, which is not what I want to do. Or sometimes I'll see the sale and be swayed because I'm already making a purchase to purchase something else that I don't strictly need but would be a nice to have. So in this way, things that we need can still be a justification to buy and to overbuy and to buy things that we didn't actually truly need. And then that doesn't even cover the subject of when when wants become needs in our mind. And I could also argue that the tablet sleeve is a want that became a need because of all of these reasons I can think of for justifying why it would be better to have one than not. And this is an interesting exercise, right? Because I do feel like in our consumer society, a lot of our brain creative energy is spent justifying why we do need things, and not as much is spent justifying why we don't, unless we're consciously doing that. And I love to see these de-influencing videos or videos where you talk yourself out of buying something for that very reason. It normalizes the practice of training our brain to think in the creative way of why we can get away without buying that thing, why we don't need it, why we can wait at the very least, and what kind of mentalities that we could cultivate instead of the enabling mentality of, yes, you should buy that. Oh, you should treat yourself. Yeah, get it, girl, or whatever it is that we might be told by our friends and we might be telling our friends. And it's not to say that we don't deserve a treat, or deserve to treat yourself, or deserve to spend some of our hard-earned money in whatever way we please. But I do think that by exposing ourselves to more of this mentality of, maybe I don't need that, maybe there's something I want or need more, and maybe I should treat myself to an Italian vacation instead of to 20 pairs of shoes, if the price of those would eventually be equivalent. Or, you know, it doesn't even have to be an Italian vacation. It could just be another more simple, more local memory-making experience, or a connection-building experience, or skills-building, or creativity-piquing, or curiosity-sparking experience. The things that I, at least personally, value much more about my human existence than stuff and consuming and adding new material goods to my life. I'm starting to see the forest for the trees. The notion of improving or upgrading is a common justification for purchase as well, ones that brands take full advantage of because they know that customers are out looking to upgrade or out interested in trying the newest technology or the new improvements in a product. Sometimes I think companies have been accused of doing this on purpose, where the first version they release has some key flaws, and then they can correct these flaws and sell you version 2.0, which is pretty despicable, to be honest. It's not a great display of human ingenuity and creativity and our ability to create good things the first time, or, you know, to protect the resources of the earth and not take advantage of other humans for the purpose of personal gain, financial gain, capital gain, whatever. But that notion of needing the better one, if there's something better out there, I should have it. If there's the version 2.0, version 6.0, the iPhone 17, whatever it is. I'm not an iPhone user, so I don't know what number we're up to. But the notion of needing the newest and best one is often a justification to buy. And I've kind of used this in conscious practice of not buying something sometimes, because in the example of, let's just say, the Apple headphones that I've kind of had on the back burner of my wish list, I was aware back when I wanted them last year that there would be a new version coming at some point this year. And so I thought, well, okay, they might make some minor improvements. I don't need them right now. I'm just going to wait until they make the improvements and see if I still want them then, if I want them more then, if they'll be more practical for my life with the improved version. And they're not. Nothing much has changed with them, apparently. It's just the charging port or whatever. Apparently they don't sell enough of them to make significant improvements, which seems hard to believe given the popularity of them on social media. But anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. They're still very much on the back burner. But anyway, this notion of upgrades and improvements has been used as a justification to buy since the creation of products, probably. And it's one of the ways that companies compete as well, by trying to make a newer, better, improved product. It can happen in any field of development, right? There's new, there's improved, there's more high-tech, there's more sustainable, more ethical, more mindful, less exploitative. So there's positive causes that brands are using to try to present an improved version of whatever they're selling as well. I guess along with that is the overt kind of sustainability justification, right? We want to make our lives more sustainable, and there are companies and products devoted to creating more sustainable products, more sustainable options for purchase, right? And so the easy trap to fall into there is, my current Ziploc bags aren't sustainable. Let me buy these reusable, sustainable ones and throw away these. I mean, hopefully we're not throwing away disposable Ziploc bags before they're used. Maybe that was a bad example, but you know, the Tupperware containers or whatever. We have some containers that work, but they're not the nice bamboo ones with the glass or whatever. So let me buy these bamboo lidded glass ones and throw away the plastic before they're fully done. And again, I have a hard time because of the health narratives with plastic and heating it being bad and leaching into food, and then you're eating the plastics, and then you don't want to compromise your health. So like, yes, there's multitudes of factors. And again, is that just another narrative that I feed into, buy into, to justify my own purchases in this regard? Possibly, but there it is. We're being truthful and transparent and displaying how I am also currently affected by these, even as I talk about them critically. Health and sustainability are motivators as well. And in some cases, they're going to be legitimate. In other cases, they're going to be less so. So in the cases of, not using asbestos and lead and other harmful substances in our clothing, and despite having exposure for chemicals in Shein and Temu products, apparently people are still buying them. I see these articles periodically, my Google News or whatever, where toxic chemicals found in Shein products has not slowed down the consumption of them. And it's kind of disheartening because some of us, myself included out here, take these health-driven narratives and try to be overly cautious. That would preclude me from ever buying anything from Shein ever again. I wouldn't want to open the package in case it exposed myself to toxic chemicals, breathing them in or whatever, particles in my house and stuff like that. And here I am also being vulnerable to the articles about the air quality in your home and trying to get filtration and getting better water quality and water filters and getting rid of the plastic in my cutlery and dishes and whatever. And there's a spectrum of vulnerability to these different consumer narratives and a spectrum of validity to them too. So there's no one right or wrong way to approach it. When it crosses into the territory of fear-mongering, though, is where I draw a firm line and try to realize these things when I see them and try not to perpetuate those for others as well. So despite everything I said about me feeling vulnerable to these articles and information that's released and solutions that can be purchased, air filters, water filters, whatever, I have not actually purchased any of those things besides doing our home for radon, which is recommended in our area, not by influencers online, but just by local housing sources. And that's all we've done. That's all that's been scientifically valid enough to actually do. We don't have the air purifier. We don't have the water filter. We did test our water and it's fine. So we've done what we can. We've done what's reasonable. I'm not trying to fall for the fear-mongering tactics, the health scares and preventing whatever diseases we can prevent, when in reality we probably can't prevent most of what happens to us in that regard anyway, aside from general lifestyle factors like diet and smoking and exercise. Okay, after that massive tangent, the concept of celebrating and you deserve it and treating ourselves is one that I've received some questions about in the comments recently too. Why do we feel the need to treat ourselves? Why do we celebrate by buying stuff or acquiring new things and deserving it? We all deserve it, right? What makes somebody more deserving of a purchase than others? And regardless of whether you make the purchase, you could still deserve it. And so it's really not a good metric for whether one should add something new to your life, whether you should buy something or not. I do think a response to stress is to look for a treat, and I don't see the harm in romanticizing smaller, simpler, everyday activities as a treat if it helps you mentally get through stressful times. For example, you could treat yourself to a cup of coffee in the morning, sitting down and really enjoying it, taking the time. You could treat yourself to a walk with a friend. You could treat yourself to going to a bakery and having a piece of cake or something like that. And, or something healthier if that's something you're trying to avoid. If you're trying to go off sugar or whatever, you can go to a restaurant and treat yourself to a bowl of soup or something. And these little things that can be part of an everyday life can also be treats. You can read a book for 5 minutes and that can be a treat, It's not necessarily the mentality of a treat itself that I think is a harmful justifier to make purchases, even though a lot of my examples did involve purchasing. It's more so that treats are something that can be acquired, that can be bought, that the act of purchase can fulfill. And it's not the act of the purchase that makes any of the examples I listed a treat, right? It's not buying the coffee, buying the soup, buying the ticket to the park where you can go take a walk. The buying is not the treat. The experience is the treat, right? And I think more and more that it really is kind of about experiences over things, but it's not about putting your money towards these things. It's about the mentality of the approach and the consuming of the experience versus the thing. And perhaps this needs to be a dedicated video, on experiences over things, part 2, because my first video on that kind of got truncated due to microphone issues. And I wasn't as developed in my ideas on that subject yet. So I will leave that for another day. But anyway, deserving it, celebrating, even being stressed about it, and looking for that treat through the purchase. It's not the way to treat ourselves. The purchase is actually never the actual treat. The act of purchase may activate the dopamine pathways and make us feel like we're getting a treat, but the treat is not actually in the purchase. The treat of a new item is actually in the use of it, the appreciation of it through its use. And that is not something related to the purchase. The purchase is only the means through which we acquire this thing. And it's not always a purchase, right? We can be given something that gives us just as much appreciation, maybe more appreciation. So the act of shopping itself is not something that gives us any of these positive benefits. And then speaking of gifting, gifting is a big justification for purchasing things, right? Oh, I need to buy this to give it to somebody else. Oh, I want to express my love through giving, or my care through giving, or my thoughtfulness through giving. In principle, that's great, right? I don't want to take any of that away from people who love to give. Again, I just come back to that point where it's not the act of the purchase that makes the act of the giving. So it doesn't matter how you acquired that item that you're going to give. In fact, it can sometimes be more meaningful if the item is acquired through making it yourself, through thrifting it, or through some kind of other experience that you might have with or without the person that you're going to give to. So again, to debunk that justification that giving and having to have gifts for people is a main reason to shop for Black Friday or sales in general. If you do have a set wish list, I can imagine in a future where I might have kids that are old enough to actually want some things and want to choose their own things and want to maybe participate a little bit in the trends of society, which I don't think is fundamentally wrong. It's a way of engaging with culture in a form, right? But I can see a time where shopping a Black Friday sale might be much more relevant in my life in order to reap the one benefit of a sale, which is saving money on something you were already going to buy and already had in mind for an extended period of time for whatever reasons, And I do hope to raise my own children to shop consciously, to want things consciously, because even at a more advanced age of childhood, I will still probably be doing more of their shopping, which is arguably dangerous for me as somebody who does get dopamine activation through the shopping, or did before, and put way too much emphasis on that in my life. But again, I'm going to continue to do the work to manage that, and if it really comes down to it, I can make my husband do the Black Friday shopping if it's still posing a problem in a decade or whenever. I think it all just comes back to that idea of conscious consuming, where we're not shopping as a hobby. We are evaluating practical needs and balancing that with the desires that we have on more whimsical terms. And if we have whimsical desires, supporting these desires with the data that would prove that these items would have great use value in our lives. Much more for the year to come, 2025, I am going to be bringing in the piece of the budget, which is so important as an external parameter for what's reasonable in our own lives as far as consumerism. Budget and a sustainability goal of how many items. So anyway, now that I've gone through all of those justifications that can be used to buy, and I haven't covered everything because the point of this question is that really everything can be used as a justification if you think about it. Some questions to ask to kind of temper this feeling that you're justifying wanting to buy something are, do you already have one? Do you already have something in this category? Would bringing another one in mean you use the one you have less? And is that a desirable outcome for you? Would you need to declutter the one you currently have? Would you need to let go of one thing in this category to keep a manageable number? Do you already have an unmanageable number in this category? Do you have more than you could use up before it would expire or become out of date or otherwise something you no longer want to use? If you already have something in this category, or a few things in this category, that's enough to make it not necessary for you now to add something new. If you are surviving without it and you don't really need it, you don't feel the lack of it in your life, you probably don't need to add it to your life, and there are various reasons why maybe you shouldn't. It doesn't matter how good of a buy it might be, doesn't matter how good of a deal you feel like you might be getting. You can always wait, you can always use something up that you currently have, you can always feel the lack of it before you move forward on the purchase. And I think that is going to be an important focus for me going forward too, is focusing on, do I feel the lack of this in my current status quo, in my current existence with the stuff that I have? And again, you can apply all of these questions if you're thinking about gifting to the person that you're thinking of giving it to. Do they already have one? Do you know this information? Because if you don't know, then you probably shouldn't move forward on a purchase when you don't know what impact it'll really have on their life as a whole. Do they already have too many of this thing? Is this going to make them have to declutter something in order to keep a manageable amount? Even giving somebody something nicer, something better than what they would treat themselves to, if it's a material good that's not consumable, then that thing is in their life for the rest of their lives, unless they either throw it away, use it until it breaks, or pass it on. And is it the quality of item that they can keep forever and use forever? Or is it meant to be kind of used and discarded? Is it something that they will eventually outgrow and either have to throw away or pass on? Are they going to feel the weight of that? Is somebody going to have to clean all these pieces up when this person passes on? You know, all these questions that we think about for ourselves. Again, I've had some comments about the art of Swedish death cleaning, and that's kind of that principle where you know that when you're no longer here, somebody's going to have to deal with all of your material, worldly things. And how arduous of a task do you want that to be for somebody else? Especially if you have the power to live with less and make it less of a task. Anyway, here we are on Black Friday talking about Swedish death cleaning, and I don't want to rain doom and gloom on what could be a kind of cheerful holiday season or a time to take advantage in a positive way of some of the deals, getting things that you need, putting some money into savings, or, you know, not having to spend as much of your money, which represents your time and your efforts and your work on the things that you were already planning to get. So the end outcome of even consuming these ideas might be that you still buy the thing, that you still get the things. It might even be that you buy a little more than you intended to, and you might even enjoy still some of the fun of shopping and buying. I'm not sure what the outcome will be for me yet, as I'm filming this before the day. I will maybe report back on whether I experienced some of the fun of the shopping and the buying, and even the utilitarian items, whether I added more to my intended purchases than I had on my list. But what I urge you to do with whatever your results are, whether you don't purchase anything at all, whether you do purchase something, and whether you purchase more than you intended, is just don't justify it, okay? Own your purchases, own your positives, your negatives, your pride and your disappointments, whatever the outcome is, and especially if you're unhappy about it, reflect on that. Ask yourself what you really wanted. What were you trying to buy? Did you actually come close to that? Or is that going to come from somewhere else, from not purchasing, from using it, from creatively exploring in a different way? If you have bought something and regret it, can you return it? That's seed to plant now on the day of the shopping, right? Check the return policies so that you do have a way out if something comes and you realize after the frenzy of the sales, after the securing the good deal, did you actually need the good deal? Can you send it back and be free from this thing in your life? No damage done? Except maybe environmental sustainability as far as returns and possibly creating merchandise that can't be resold, and then the emissions of the travel of the item, the transit, and all of that fossil fuel consumption. Anyway, we're getting back into doom and gloom territory, and that's not really where I want to leave you today. I hope you are able to shop the sales in a way that you want to, and avoid the sales if you don't want to shop at all. And if you are in the same or similar boat to me, where you have shopped too much in the past, it might help to focus on parameters that are more firm, like a budget, like a number of items that you want to own, and contemplating what it would do to your collections of stuff if you add even more things. And you can also come back tomorrow for a list, a small list of things I really regret purchasing, especially because I was influenced. Things that I'm using as a lesson to not buy any more things in that same vein. And it's kind of like the sales continue, you know, the sales don't just stop at Black Friday. So the video tomorrow will still remain relevant, even if you've already made some purchases during this sales season. Or they may not be relevant. I can't tell you what's relevant to your life or not, even in this landscape of holiday sales, especially in this landscape of holiday sales. I don't know your life. I don't know your needs. I don't know your goals, but I do appreciate you spending some time with me on my journey here of trying to become a more conscious consumer. And I will see you tomorrow in the next one. Bye for now.